Welcome to KW Philly's Associate Leadership Council Open House Workshop, where we're going to teach you how to build a big business with real estate sales using open houses. So we'll talk about some statistics so you understand who's coming to open houses and what a 7th level open house is, and then best practices from some of our agents here. So fewer than 1% or less than 1% of buyers buy the house that's being held open. So why would we hold an open house?
Get context. Right?
Yes, exactly.
They might not like the house that you're showing, but maybe in a different area. Or...
Exactly. What is it that a realtor actually sells?
His assistants.
What was that?
His assistant.
Exactly. So you want to think of yourself more as a consultant, somebody that's going to uncover their need and provide a solution. So the chances are that one house was not the solution for them. And 44% of buyers use open houses in their research phase, so they might not be ready. So these guys who do open houses on a very regular basis can give you more of their anecdotal experience, but generally speaking, it seems like I hear that either people have an agent already and they just wanted to get into the house that day, or they're like months out from making a purchase. And it's not only buyers that go to open houses, sometimes sellers go too. And there are ways that you can encourage people who are selling their home to come as well. So in other workshops, and you can go to stacylovesrealestate.com to see the prior webinars about the sales pipeline. But essentially, you may have 7 visitors, but only one is actually going to use an agent that they need at the open house. And if you look at the sales funnel, you've got to talk to a lot of people so that a few meet with you, so that a few actually turn into clients, so that one closes. So I just worked backwards from this idea that if 1 in 6 or 7 visitors is a buyer that will work with an open house agent, you might need to get 21 visitors even to set 3 appointments. Because every appointment you set, you won't go on because they'll cancel, they'll ghost you, whatever. It may just not happen. So out of 3 appointments, you may go on 2 or 1, and that 2 or 1 may turn into a client who then becomes a sale. So you always want to start with the end goal, which is the sale, and then backtrack into how many people you need to talk to in order to make that happen. So all of your activities up front before the open house are in the service of getting all the people there and or uncovering need through phone conversations, door knocking conversations before the open house. The open house is just an excuse to reach out to people and to meet people. Okay. And also, so one of the greatest skills that you can work on is setting the appointment when you're in person with people. So these guys are going to give you their best questions that they ask to engage people. Because what do most people think about salespeople? Yeah, that we could be really annoying. And guess what? You know why we're annoying? Because you freaking ignore us. You told us that you wanted to buy, and then you ghost us. The reality is that if I as a buyer have gone to 10 different open houses, I'm getting bombarded by 10 different agents, right? If I clicked on get more information on Zillow, chances are I've reached out to 10 different agents. So I've got lots of people reaching out to me. And I am bombarded as a buyer who's just trying to do some research, right? So, so the point is that if you develop the conversational skills that get them to trust you and understand that you're there to help them, you're more likely to get the appointment, number 1. Number 2, if you do it while you're at the open house and set the appointment, you're more likely to get that appointment than if you wait until later.
I just going back to salesperson in my business, so I sell textile art and Kohl's and JCPenney. We cannot be a pushy salesperson and look who's on the blacklist.
Yeah,
it has to just limited things. And I guess then you have to have you got to be on them, and I guess making sure that you have getting them what they want, but then. Right.
Yeah, in this business, it's a challenge to distinguish between they no longer want to work with me from they're just busy. You know, so we're always promoting.
You can set up there.
You want to make sure too?
Yeah.
We're always promoting coming from contribution and giving something to get something in advance of ever asking for something. I once had a closet lady call me every month for a year after giving me a quote. And I actually didn't mind it because, you know, it was her job to follow up with me. It was just that my life was too busy to put that in my schedule at the time. So you will learn in real estate kind of how you come across best to people. And sometimes you do need to reach out in a variety of ways, and they will come back to you, and you'll think they totally ghosted you. Like, it'll be a year. Like, I'm literally thinking of a story Allison told me, you know, I've seen signs go up on houses that I door knocked a year ago, you know, like, so, yeah.
I mean, it's the business.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I saw a for sale by owner sign. I didn't call on it. I saw a sign in the window, you know, an agent sign like a couple weeks later. So you just have to, it's like driving a car for the first time. It's like you have to figure out the right pressure of gas, right? So you don't go careening into a fence. All right, so a 7th level open house. So there's a book called Shift. Has anybody heard of this book called Shift by Gary Keller? Do you know anything about this book called Shift? Okay. So markets shift up and down all the time. We're due for a shift where it takes longer to sell things. Things are not selling for as much as they might have been selling for in prior markets, or the pace of appreciation is lower. And that's a great opportunity if you've built the skills to get clients that you've never met before. Because a lot of agents will get out of the business at that time. So if you can show your value in that time frame, you can actually get more business. So Shift is all about these 12 tactics to build your business in a turning market. So the one about open houses talks about a 7th level open house. And you do have the slides are on your handout in case you can't see the screen. So level 1 through 4. Now, I don't know if you've been around agents before, but have you heard anybody complaining about open houses? Has any agent you talk to ever complaining, oh, they don't work, or I only get buyers? Anybody hear that? You'll probably hear that when you get in the office. It's probably because they're doing the absolute minimum to promote the open house. They're running around with their head cut off like a chicken during the week. They're not practicing what they're saying in advance of going. They're not calling neighbors. They're not door knocking neighbors. They're just putting it in the MLS and maybe carrying a sign, you know, in front of the property that day. So of course you're going to complain that they don't work. Because when people walk in that door, everything they're trying to do is avoid us, and they give us wrong information. So level 1 through 4 are the basics. There are signs, there are riders on the sign, there's balloons, you're putting in the MLS, I think flyers, flyers the week before, social media, that thing. So it may feel active, but it's pretty passive because you're just putting it out there and then hoping people will come. Come on now. Let me give you one. Oh. So buyers are the ones that are looking at Zillow and the MLS and, you know, actively looking for open houses to go to. People who are thinking about selling their homes are not necessarily doing that. So if you've ever tried to put on a workshop for buyers or sellers, buyers is the easiest workshop in the world to put together. Buyers will come every day of the week to a workshop about buying a home. Sellers, you've got to meet them in their home pretty much. I've never had success. That's just me. With doing a seller workshop. Usually their situations are very personal and they want you to see the house that they're selling. But finding sellers is by calling the neighbors, and you can get the numbers, by door knocking the neighbors. Like, who here thinks they're better in person, face to face, than on the phone? Yeah, these guys are being honest. Maybe I need to repeat the question over here. No. If you've had a serious conversation with a family member, is it better to have it on the phone or in person? In person. Do you know why that is?
Because things more misunderstood over the phone.
Yeah. What are you, yeah, what are you seeing face to face? Their expressions. 55% of communication is body language. Only 38% is tonality and 7% is words. So if 7%, think about this, everybody here who texts. If communication, if only 7% is based on words, no wonder we misunderstand each other all the time, right? So you want to get in front of people. So you go door knocking, and there are people here who do it and love it. And people are really nice. It's really hard to hang up a phone if they're in person, right? And even on the phone, if they hang up, you'll live. Nobody's died for somebody hanging up on the phone or hanging up. So then you start to introduce yourself to potential sellers. And when you learn the conversations to have with people, it just becomes so much easier. And then the level 7 open house is where you're having basically 5 open houses in a similar area. Has anybody ever heard of comparison shopping? So do you know Jewelers Row? So you have all those jewelers. Why are they all located right next to each other? Wouldn't that be bad for business? You miss your business, man.
To compare pricing, compare time to meet more time.
Exactly. So by having a Jewelers Row, people are able to visit each of the shops, and you're more likely to get a visitor if you're next to the other jewelers. So you have 5 open houses in different price points in the same neighborhood. You know, a lot of times people are not coming and shopping in the right price range. They just saw a sign, they just came in. But there might be a condo that's lower price that might be better for them down the street. Or maybe they can afford parking and there's one around, you know, in the neighborhood that they can afford. And then by coordinating that with other agents in the office, you can actually make a day of it and promote it together, and then you know, create more energy around it. So does anybody have any questions about 7th level open houses and how you can really max out your activity the week before in order to drive more visitors?
Do you use Facebook and Instagram?
Everything. Yeah, everything, every avenue.
You can get a blimp, get a blimp.
There's some things that are cost effective and some things that are not. But I just wanted to make, so that's like Keller Williams' prescription. I just wanted to give you some of my own, you know, thoughts about open houses. Number 1, your mindset and the words you use around open houses matters. You want to work an open house. You do, or host, if that is something more exciting, like hosting a party. You do not want to sit an open house because you are just inviting yourself to be bored and miserable and pissed off that you're working on a Sunday or Saturday afternoon. And then promote the heck out of it. We already talked about that. Okay, so I'm a big advocate of leverage, of paying other people to do a job that they can do so that I can do something that I do best and get paid the most to do. So this one is sometimes hard for people to swallow, but I'm just going to run through it with this idea. So there is a company that will put out your directional signs. So you see those 10 signs sitting in the corners when you are on Saturday, Sunday, you see it says open house that way, open house that way. Center City Signs for $50 will put out open house directional signs, and they put out hours before your open house and then hours after. So in essence, you might be getting 5 hours of advertising for $50. And this is my favorite part, you're not sweating. Because like my signs are really heavy, and then I would just sweat and be angry, and then I go to my open house ready to greet people, and it's just not a pretty sight. So in the time that it would take to prepare the signs, put out the signs, pick up the signs, you could be door knocking, you could be on the phone calling people. And so instead of the 40 hours, let's say you did 40 open houses in a time period, that would cost $2,000. Let's say you did 40 hours of door knocking or calls. I'm guaranteeing you will get at least a deal out of that, and that's at least $6,000 to $10,000. So you do the math. Is that a good return on your investment? Yeah. So sometimes people are like, I don't have the $50. I get it. You know, at some point, though, I would strongly urge you to consider that this is a leverage tool so that you can be more effective in the activities that you do. And then my last point is always finding out if somebody is a neighbor or a shopper for a home. Because neighbors, I used to think that neighbors were super annoying, they were nosy, they wanted to talk and waste my time. But then I realized that they're talking to me, they're talking to their other neighbors, and they might know what's going on in the neighborhood. And they can be there to interview you without you knowing. You might be secret shopping as a listing agent. So I was like, there are lots of great opening questions that you'll hear. I was going to start with are you a neighbor? Do you have shopping for a home today? And they'll tell you. And then if it's a buyer, I always want to know, knowing that only less than 1% is going to buy the home that is held open. So what does your home must have? What must your home have in order for you to buy it? Because I want to know right away if this home is going to match what they're looking for. Because if you walked into my open house, Janelle, right? And I asked, what must your home have before you buy it? Tell me something. A pool in the back. We are not in Florida. All right. So pool in the back. I was like, Janella, this place does not have a pool in the back, but what it does have is a hot tub on the roof. Go check it out and let me know if that will work for what you're looking for. Or if I wanted to ask an intermediary question, I'd be like, what's important about a pool to you? You might tell me, kids parties, this, that, the other thing. And maybe I'll say, this house doesn't have a pool, but there's a rec center around the corner that has a great pool that you could do that. So how do you feel me saying that to you as you came to my open house?
I would love it. And I will go in with the rooftop, she said, hot tub.
That's his name. So essentially, you're trying to get into what they're looking for rather than selling them this house. And then you're eliminating it right away. Or you're saying a feature that's the same that they're looking for, or a little different that they're looking for, and you can say, let me know what you think. And then you're showing it doesn't matter to you what we buy. I always tell people, you can be buying shoes, I'm just here to help you make a good decision. And then I'll jewel your shoes for you.
Did you do that yourself?
I did. Yes, I have to fix them because they're, yeah. So any questions just about my little segment thing? Give me an aha or a takeaway from that, any of that. Oh, they have it in front of them, but go ahead, yeah. I'd like to hear an aha. That's something that stood out. Yeah.
Finding out what the client is looking for and kind of talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Different ideas, like you just said.
Yes.
Food, we had a hot tub, it was like great.
We are problem solvers, if nothing else. We're problem solvers and project managers as realtors. So the more we can think creatively and outside the box. For example, I called this agent to ask, this is like a little side note, what time is it?
We're good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I want to tell you this little side note because I was pretty proud of my engineering. So I'm listing this corner bar with a liquor license and a rental property upstairs. So I went into multiple listing service and I looked at other properties that had sold. And then I saw this one. I wanted to find out what the rental rates were, what the liquor license sold for, and what the building sold for, because it's all lumped together. So I called that agent, and he tells me, he actually told me all this information, and I was grateful, and he said, there's a lead, there's somebody who keeps calling me. Her name is X, she has a bar on this street, and she's got a KW agent. So I was like, okay, if you can find it, that would be great. So what I did was like, let me see if I can find it. So I was like, I Googled, and I found what seemed to be a bar on that street where the owner name was X. So I called, talked to the manager, forwarded the email, and then she got back to me and said, my agent is Nikki. Yeah. Nikki. So then I told Nikki that I had a potential, property for his client. So, just thinking, how can I find the information? How can I make this work? Because we're not going to get everything we're looking for in any specific home. It's not like buying new cars where you get to pick features of color and this or that. We're helping people buy used homes. We want to help them match their lifestyle the best that we can. Okay, cool. Let's go on to Marco.
Yeah,
He's gonna
so,
be a lot briefer than I am, a lot less long-winded. And keep in mind, we're recording.
all right, cool. So, I started in the business I'm going into my third year now, so about 2 years ago. And I would say probably about at least 40% of my business over the past couple of years has been open houses. So, it's been a really big chunk of my business. And like, by a show of hands, who likes cold calling? Okay, so no one likes cold calling, but who would love for someone who is interested in talking about real estate to walk into a home that's for sale and talk to only you? Does that sound better? Right? So it's kind of like the comparison is almost like this is your storefront. It's like someone walking into your little real estate store and you get to have a conversation with them. So one thing I really like about open houses is that it makes door knocking easy. I would assume that most of you aren't really excited to go and knock on a bunch of people's doors, and it's not the most appealing idea. But if you're going around and you're knocking on doors and all you're saying is, hey, we're hosting an open house down the street, you're a neighbor, we just wanted to invite all the neighbors to come through and check it out. That conversation is way easier to have, and really, it doesn't exactly matter, why you're making that contact. It's that you're making the contact, and then from there, other conversations will arise. So maybe you invite them to that open house, and then they say, well, how much is that house going for? Just out of curiosity, tell them the price. Have you considered selling your house, or basically just getting into other conversations and using that as the in. It's an invite instead of just knocking on someone's door and saying, hey, I'm looking for people who are selling their houses. Way easier to get in that way. So that's one thing I really like about open houses. Two is that you have, do you have a question? Yeah.
Maybe also saying, like when you door knock, asking them if they have family or friends that it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to select?
Right. You don't go right into that. You kind of have to have the conversation go in an organic way. So, if you invite them to the open house, then maybe you say, yeah, if you want to stop by, or if you happen to know anyone, looking to move into the neighborhood that would want to stop by, and just kind of naturally get into a conversation about real estate with them. That's what I found.
What's your favorite part of the neighborhood, so I can
Yeah.
tell people who visit?
Yeah,
I know what I
too.
like, but I don't live right here, but you do, what do you like? What do you brag about?
And I mean, door knocking is nice because you're face to face. Typically, face to face is a stronger interaction than cold calling or something like that. And I've literally door knocked around a listing of mine, and the next door neighbor says, I want to sell in 6 months. And like you were talking about, sometimes you don't know when people are ghosting you or if they're just busy. And I literally texted him and called him probably over and over for 6 months and didn't hear back once until he finally texted me back and said, hey, sorry, I've been busy, but I want to sell the house now. And we just sold it. So it happens that way. Like if you looked at my text thread with him, you would think I was like a maniac because I probably had like 6 or 7 unanswered texts, but he got back to me eventually and I sold the home. So really good for making door knocking easy. The second thing is when people come in, you're going to want to kind of start qualifying them and not just, anyone can sit in an open house and have people come through and just, be on the phone or be answering emails and not paying attention. This is like your time. So when people come through, you want to prospect and see, first of all, you want to capture their information on a sign-in sheet. And then secondly, you want to start qualifying them. What brought you through today? Are you pre-approved? Are you working with an agent? So like just trying to figure out like where they're at in the process, and then also like, have you been looking in this neighborhood only, or like are you looking in other neighborhoods as well? What exactly are you looking for? And what I've done is, this says closing for the buyer consultation. I try and have a mini buyer consultation with them at the open house. And then if I don't have time to actually have it at the open house, if it's like a really busy one, that's when I'll try and close for a consultation at another time. But if it's a slow day and I have someone who comes through and they're really talking to me, I'll just kind of, get them to the point where they're telling me right at the open house exactly what they're looking for, exactly the neighborhoods they've been looking in, exactly the price range. And that allows me to then start sending them properties and following up with them. And once you start following up with them, they're seeing your name, you're sending them valuable information, they're way more likely to work with you. And that's where I've gotten a lot of my success from. And I know you mentioned having people sign in and maybe put the wrong information. If you have a good conversation with someone, I've literally had people who are like, oh, you know what, like, let me switch my email, like, email me this one. I'm like, okay, cool. So, like, if you give them value and show that you're not gonna just like spam them with crap that, is just random, but you're actually gonna give them things that they're gonna find valuable in their search, then they're gonna, be more willing to give you accurate information and actually, interface with you when you follow up. And that leads me to the next point, which is following up. So you can really, and I've done this before where I have a great conversation with someone at the open house, things went well, and then I, for whatever reason, will either forget to follow up or be too busy to follow up. And there's kind of like a sweet spot of like very soon after your first interaction with them, having to kind of like cement yourself as the person who's going to be their resource. So like you said, they're going to like 5 or 10 different open houses maybe. So there might be 5 or 10 different agents who are following up with them. So if you feel like you had a really good connection with someone, make sure that you're differentiating yourself, you're following up pretty quickly with value, and that they feel comfortable right off the bat interfacing with you. Because if you let it go, even sometimes for 2 or 3 days, it gets stale, and then they forget how good that interaction was and the value that you did provide, and then maybe they do ghost you or someone else followed up better. I literally had one open house that I did where I told these people that came in that I would follow up with them with a few properties, and I followed up with them the next day, and they'd already bought a property. And I was like, if I would have just followed up and just like sent them these properties, I might have been the person to take them through this other one and would have sold it. So sometimes it happens quickly. So if you say you're going to follow up with properties and you can do it right after the open house when they still remember you and you're fresh in their head, do it. And then that gives you a reason to actually follow up more and say, hey, did you get the properties? Were there any that you like? Are there any you want to go see? All that kind of stuff. And then the last point is this is just a great way to add to your database every week. You have people coming through, they're going to give you their information. Sometimes it's the right information, sometimes it's not, but either way, you get their contact information and you're adding to your database, which allows you to, put them on your email blast that might go out once or twice a month, stay in front of them, follow up with them, and just expand your network in the city. So this is essentially everything that I did over the first couple years, and I've done really well in my business, mostly because of open houses. So that's my spiel. Any questions? Or... No? You next?
Oh, we have a question. So when you have like, potential buyers or renters and when you're doing an open house,
Yeah.
When you have someone that's like kind of cold toward you, like when Stacy earlier mentioned, like, oh, like what are you looking for? They say like, exposed brick and you don't have it, kind of like just shut off. Well, like last week I did an open house in the Richmond area, and I had someone like that, and I kind of just like abruptly like naturally just stopped wanting to talk to them because they were kind of weren't that interested. But would you have some like kind of tactics to keep them in contact and show them other properties?
I mean, it depends. Like, I'm never hard selling the properties that I'm at. So, like, if they say, oh, this one, like, I'm looking for exposed brick, I'll be like, oh, yeah, this one doesn't have it. But, like, there's actually one down the street that has exposed brick. Did you see this address? And maybe they get into a conversation with you that way. I mean, also, like, I'm just not everyone's cup of tea. Someone might be cold towards me, and if they're cold towards me and don't want to work with me, that's all right. Like, I think there's enough business that I'm not going to be the person for everyone, but you just want to find the people that you get along with and that actually trust you and like you, because that'll make business more fun too. Like, you don't want to work with people who you feel like you're pulling teeth, you know?
Real estate is a lot like dating.
It's so much like dating.
Like the urgency with which you decide to call the girl a nice day or not, you know, or like the chemistry, did you vibe,
Yeah.
you know, so, you know, if you go out to dinner with somebody and you do all the talking, chances are they're not gonna like you, even if you're Mother Teresa. But if you ask them great questions and it doesn't seem like you're interrogating them, and yet they're talking all about themselves, they'll end the day, they'll be like, wow, that guy was great. You know, like if you're getting them to talk. So it's like, you really don't understand the pacing until you're in the business.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why you've got to get out in the field right away.
And it takes time too. Like, I would say it can happen quickly. Like, one of my first closing ever was from an open house, and it happened pretty quickly. But then there's, you know, people who they'll say, oh, I did open houses and they don't work, but they've really only done like 5 or 6 open houses. It's like, you need to actually, it's like anything, you have to practice and do it. Yeah, and I mean, but even if you still have an open house, there's gonna be people who come through for you to actually practice your scripts on and, you know, do that kind of thing on. So it's like, you need to use that time and not just be passive about it and give up after a few open houses. You know, you have to like actually continue to master it.
So get a good feel, but don't overthink the reaction to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything. Like, you get into conversations with some people and you vibe, other people you don't overthink it, but if you can provide value and be helpful, then do it. I had one couple that I gave them literally a half hour of my time, like walked them through the entire buying process, all this stuff, and then I would follow up with them and they like went with some random Redfin agent that, you know, I don't know, but I was like, all right, you know, it is what it is. They weren't feeling it. You know, you can't force it.
Oh, yes, you can.
Anyone else? Questions?
I was just thinking of the realtor, my realtor, I liked him, we got along.
Yeah.
I think that's why I stayed with him.
Yeah.
He's-
I think the main thing is, like, in any business, if people like you and they trust you, then there's not really a reason for them not to work with you. So for me, it's always been when I'm face to face with someone, be personable, have a little charisma, but also show them that I know what I'm doing and that they can trust me as a professional. And if you can do those 2 things, the rest becomes pretty easy because there's not really that many objections. And like, also when you're doing this, don't ever look at it as I'm selling a house or, you know, like in my opinion, it's either you help people to buy a house or you help people to sell a house. So if you come from that mindset where you're not a salesman anymore, that helps as well. It puts less pressure on it. Yeah, you're just building relationships, and if they like you and they trust you, usually they're gonna buy with you. Now, there will be some that slip through the cracks, but, you know, that's what that means.
The way I like to think about the ones that slip through the cracks is that you went to work, you pay 60 grand a year versus you could start earning money in this business and you may learn $5,000 lessons at a time.
Yep.
You know, so it's like, oh, but I didn't have to pay it. I just didn't earn it.
Yep. You'll learn a lot of lessons
Yeah,
that.
but treat it like you're going to work, like do the work, you know, plan, track, time block, adjust. Interesting.
All right, hello, everyone. I'm Sharissa, as I mentioned earlier. I've been in the business for about 2 years. Again, same thing, most of my business has been from open houses. So I'm gonna give you my tips on how I've chosen or how I select, prepare for, and conduct my open houses. So first, I always choose my open house very wisely. So I always like to pick an area that I do a lot of business in, or an area that I live in, or somewhere that I frequent, because then I have easy conversation points, and it's not so much about the house or the selling aspect. It's about, hey, so you like this neighborhood? Do you know about Ox Coffee? Do you know about this? Do you go here? Do you go there? And then they naturally want to talk to you more. And then you're like naturally going into a more organic relationship with that person from which you have now gained their trust and can provide information on something that's, you know, ordinarily kind of intimidating. You also want to pick a home that's new to the market. So when you're going through, once you get access to multiple listing service, you want to look at how long the home has been on the market. If it's the first weekend, it's fantastic because you're going to get very hot buyers who are in the market right now and are probably frustrated with what they've seen and are looking for that next best thing, right? So they're going to be hot. Yes.
When you say choose, you can just choose the house you want to sell.
So, so when you work for a brokerage, you're going to have access to all the listings that are available at the brokerage. It's all in-house, basically, so you can just approach the listing agent and, if they're not sitting it themselves or something like that, they're probably happy to have you do it because you're helping them, provide value for their client and then also in so doing, getting value for yourself. So everybody wins, you know what I mean? So listing agents are actually quite happy to have you sit their open houses because they don't have to do it. Work their open houses rather. All right, so yeah, pick a home that's new to the market. You want it to be fresh, it's new. So, the buyers that are on the market and active right now, they're gonna come to those open houses. Oftentimes with their agent, or they'll say they have an agent, but a lot of times you're gonna get the freshest buyers that way. Also a price drop. If the house has been on the market for a minute and it just dropped in price, again, you're gonna get a new flux of people coming in who are in that price point and are assuming that this is sort of a new listing. It's a new listing to them. So again, that's for your traffic. Before the open house is, as we mentioned, pivotal, right? So you don't want to practice on the people that come in. You want to talk to them. You want to practice before you get there so that you know what you're going to say, because you don't want to be stumbling or seem like you don't really know what you're talking about or you don't have a system. What people love is procedure, right? They want to feel like they walked into the doctor's office and they were handed a sign-in sheet and everything is progressing as normal. It's not like you're specifically dealing with them. To an extent, yes, you want to provide a custom experience, but it's really important to be systematic. And the best route to systematic is practice. In addition to preparation, look at what else is on the market around that house. One great thing that you can always do is print out a comparable home with you and be like, oh, you didn't like this one. Do you want to see this one later? Price just dropped. It's hot. You should definitely see this. If you like this, you're going to like this. This is way better. And it's cheaper. Are you free after that? Get out at 3. You want to come with me? It's easy. It's a really easy thing and they're already out. So it's even better if they're at the end of your open house. You're like, I'm almost done here. Let's go right now. So it keeps them engaged and it shows that you are a market expert. Like you know what's available. Even better if it's off the market and it's like a seller you've been enticing. That's 2 for 1. Because now you're impressing the seller that you're bringing people that you're not even like actually the house isn't even probably on the market yet. And 2, you're impressing the buyer because you have insider knowledge that they're not going to get from any other agent. Again, it's about differentiating yourself and proving that you're going to provide more value than someone else. Finally, during the open house, I like to get there early and set up music. I've actually only recently been doing that, but I find that it provides a lot of energy. I try to do something at 120 beats per minute or higher, because it feels like you're at like a swanky club or you walked into like Aldo where they always have the music going and you're like, oh, I'm gonna shop and buy some shoes today. You know what I mean? Like it just takes all that pressure off. When you walk into a silent house, so that's like house music. Yeah. So I used to be a
House music in a house?
yeah, you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Dad joke. Yeah, no, it seriously does. I actually had a client say to me the other day, she's like, I don't know if I'm interested because of the music or because I like the house. I'm like, well, it could be both. And then finally, offer them an item of value before you ask for the appointment. They'll be so much happier to give you not only correct information, but also agree to an appointment. So what's an item of value? Any ideas? I already gave you kind of one, like a comp. Who has an idea? What would you want if you were a buyer or a seller?
So you want to put all the information like square footage.
Right. You can say, hey, I have a market update on everything that's sold in the area. Would that be important to you? How about the seller's disclosure? They're interested in that house and you have a copy of the seller's disclosure or you don't, and you need their email to get it to them. You've also done two things. You've collected and captured their data and provided an item of value. You can also provide, like, we have this thing at KW called a Homekeeper app, huge for clients because it allows you to create a network of professionals that you will work with throughout your transaction. And people love that. People walk in, they're like, I have a leak in my roof right now. I'm like, great. I actually happen to have 6 roofers that I've spoken with personally that have been recommended by my clients and my fellow realtors that, will be happy to come out tomorrow and fix your roof. So those are my open house tips. Any questions? I always get the silence. What is that about? Any ahas or takeaways? Yeah, the music is huge. You're walking into a quiet house, everybody's like on edge already. If you walk in a house with those music, it kind of feels like you walked into your cousin's house. You're like at a party, you know what I mean? It's like low pressure immediately. You're like, oh, then you're at a house. So it already feels like, you're walking around the kitchen, you're like opening the fridge. Before you know it, you're like hanging out. You know what I mean? So it doesn't feel like you're selling them something, which you are. You're selling them yourself. You're selling them your personality. And that, as we've already discussed, is a lot of what they're buying. Yeah? All right, any other questions or takeaways before?
I had heard some agents that, like, cookies or,
Yeah.
give out little gifts.
Yeah, the only thing about that is like ROI. Like, you don't want to spend like $100 on, federal donuts and then have a bucket of chicken that you have to eat at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So yeah, just watch it, like, kind of figure out economical way to do that. Because it's easy to go crazy. Like, I've definitely seen people get whole trays of sushi and bottles of wine, champagne, like, and then they're just chubbier by the end. So, you know what I mean? Which is not a bad thing, but I'm just saying. Yeah. All right, and that's me.
We have one more slide and we'll turn it over to Jason for test prep.
Great.
So Chris is another great realtor at KW, and he had a closing today and was like up in East Falls. So I interviewed him the other week when I was with somebody else, so he gave me all his best tips. So number one, we were looking, the guy I was working with at the time, I was coaching him, he was like, I'm not getting any clients out of this, So we asked Chris, what's your conversion rate? And he's like, 1 out of 10 people he's able to convert into an appointment. So it's like, it's always good to have an idea as to a benchmark and what other people are doing. That way you can track what you're doing. Because sometimes you could get really down and out in this business because you're like, I'm converting 2% of the people I'm calling. 2% might be double of what the norm is. So you just need to know what the norm is for that activity. And then you can, I just put a timer on just so we can end early, or on time rather. Okay. So if you don't know the benchmark, then you don't know how you're working towards that benchmark. And if you are, let's say 10% was the standard and you're working at 5%, then maybe there's a skills gap. So you need to work on skills. He always starts with, oh, what brought you in today? Did you see it online or did you see my signs outside? So then if you also do like multiple kinds of online things, you can drill down into, oh, was it like, do you remember what website? And maybe they'll say, somebody on Instagram forwarded it to me, or maybe I saw it in the MLS with my realtor, they sent it. And then like, oh, so you live in the neighborhood, or you just, maybe there's a brunch spot nearby. So he likes to try to find out if they live in the neighborhood or if they're visiting. So last slide, we couldn't stay on. And then, so when he finds out, well, I'm not going to worry about that. There we go. When he finds out if they rent in or they own it, or they live in the neighborhood, it's like, oh, so do you rent or you own? So he's trying to look and see that. So then he usually chit chats as he walks around with them, tries to understand like what they do for a day job. How might knowing what somebody does for a living, aside from the clue up there, so he uses what they do for a living to understand how to offer the best appointment time for them. Because if they're an ER doctor, they learn that she does 3 12-hour shifts. Well, it's like, oh, what are your off days? Or, and then you can offer an appointment time that they're more likely to accept because you use their schedule. Or maybe they're an accountant, they work in Center City. So it's like, oh, you know, I'd be happy to meet you at 5 o'clock when you get off, like, I'm right down the street, something like that. But what's another thing that knowing what they do for a living might tell you about them?
Price range, they can afford.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah,
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, yeah. And also, there are certain physicians loans, and so if you do meet somebody who's a doctor, like Wells Fargo, I think has something for union laborers. So you might be able to pinpoint a loan program that actually is, you know, specific to their job. So that's a really good one. Anything else that you can think of what somebody's job? Like, what do you, knowing that I'm a realtor, what do you think or know about me? Only nice things.
You know the areas, you know a lot of different areas. You know the price range.
Well, what about me personally?
Very social.
Social. So you learn somebody's an accountant, what might you think about them?
Social.
Social?
No way.
They're good at math. What else?
They're very quiet.
They're very quiet. Yeah, so they probably want a lot of details and information to make a decision. So when you start to learn about what people do for a living, you're also learning about their personality style. And when you learn about their personality style, you'll start to learn how they make decisions and how you should best interact with them. You know, because like somebody who's like a receptionist, you know, is probably good at making people feel comfortable. So that person might be all about like entertaining in their house or the family environment. Whereas the accountant might be like, I need a 1,700 square foot house with 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. Specific yard space and things like that. So, so as you can see, this job, kind of tying back what we started with, you come into this profession, you are learning to do 5, 6, 7 jobs all at once. So the key is you learn it in layers, like the dance thing I was telling you before. You learn the steps and the arms and the body and the face. And you also learn it with the help of a coach, you know, a mentor, a team, you know, and you got to figure out what's a good fit for you. So who's here for the test prep as well? Okay. And did everybody sign in? Okay, I guess Jen did her job. We'll pay her $10. So any other last questions before we let Jason in and have at it? All right, so thank you so much for coming. If you checked off, if you wanted our team leader to give you more information, or if you didn't check it off and you wanted to give you more information, let's go find that sign-in sheet and we can connect you guys. All right. All right. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome.